Shalom. Good afternoon. This is Avraham Shira from Eretz Israel. Today's shiur, the Messiah Files, when God turns up the volume, is a collection of ideas that I've been gathering for quite a while. And it kind of came together here on the 7th day of the Sukkot, the day of David HaMelech, who was the anointed of God, who was a messianic figure. He did not complete the mission, but he certainly got it started and did a lot to solidify Am Yisrael as a nation, as a force in the world, as a spiritual center for all spiritual people from all over this planet. The title of this year, When God Turns Up the Volume, is about the Messianic era, the era that we are in. And we're going to go through a list of ideas that are going to help describe, well, what I mean by when God turns up the volume. You're going to know. It's not a radio, but it's, let's say it's your inner stereo. And it's a power that is in us. There's a power that is growing daily on many levels. But we're going to go back in time first. We're going to go back to the very beginning of creation, the beginning of Bereshit, which we'll be reading on Simchas Torah tomorrow, the beginning when God decided to create the universe. What does it tell us? That the Ruach Elohim merachefet al panei hamayim, that the Spirit of God hovers on the waters. The great medieval commentator Rashi tells us, Da rucho shel Mashiach. That is the spirit of Messiah. In other words, the spirit of Messiah, of Moshiach, was first created in the beginning of time. So what's going on? There was nothing to save yet. And yet God created the Messiah. There was only the infinite light, and then the beginning of the separations of those gradations of power. There was nothing physical yet. It was only the beginnings of what the Kabbalah calls the empty space, and then the original line of infinity that carved out the Sphirot, which were the traits of God, as they would be expressed through all of reality, including the human soul, of course. Because we are made in His image, we are a collective of all the traits. A mosquito, there's a few of them out here in the sukkah. It has traits, it has powers given to it from God, but it doesn't have the collective powers. Right? Only man has all the powers combined and unified in one. So we have this spirit of Moshiach created in the beginning of time. What's it doing there? It's the power of redemption. What's there to be redeemed? Well, this spirit of redemption, the Ruach Mashiach, was first created in the beginning because God was redeeming a part of Himself. The Alter Rebbe of Tanya tells us that the chief quality of the Messianic soul is the desire to redeem, to save others, to save creation, to save what is special, to save what is infinite and eternal. And God recognized in Himself this power. And that's why I believe it was created in the beginning, because God was beginning the saving of His own internal reality that He wanted to express into the universe. If you're an artist and you're not allowed to create, how are you going to feel? You're going to feel terrible. There's this thing boiling inside you that needs to be created. There's this tremendous beauty inside you that wants to come out. And you might be writing it out or singing it out or painting it out. But there's this spirit of creativity inside every being. And God had it in the beginning. And He had to bring it out. And that is this universe. And the spirit of Messiah was the original force to bring it out, to save that peace within Himself. Now this spirit of Messiah returns over and over in history. The Shar Gilgulim, the book of reincarnation of Rabbi Chaim Vital, tells us that this spirit came into Moses and it came into Abraham. He went to save his nephew Lot. Now Lot, there's questions about his character, but Avraham didn't care about his character. Avraham wanted to save his nephew because he knew that the Messianic spirit was going to come through him. So he had to go save him. And then that same spirit came later in Yosef, who went to Egypt and spent 13 years in prison, and then he ended up becoming the viceroy of Egypt, and he saved the world from starvation by using divine wisdom to manage the 7 good years and to feed the world. Then, of course, King David comes along. King David was God's chosen king, and he received the anointing spirit, and he was the one who saved Am Yisrael from many, many wars and battles with our enemies around us. Along comes Solomon, King Shlomo, who builds the temple. He was also anointed by this oil. He had that spirit. So this spirit, we can track it throughout history, Jewish history. The Arizal saved the world from its ignorance of Kabbalah. There were Kabbalists for thousands of years, but it was not written down in a systematic form until the Arizal put it together with Rabbi Chaim in the Eitz Chaim and all the other Shmoni Sha'arim. So he carried the soul of Moses into the future, as did Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai when he wrote the Zohar. He was putting together and saving all those hidden teachings. And after the Arizal, of course, came the Baal Shem Tov and Rabbi Nachman, who saved the simple Jews who had no access to the inner secrets of the Torah, through the mysticism that is part of and parcel and the backbone, the inner life force of our tradition. So when we think about the soul of Messiah and who he is, we're not really worried about identity here, because it's a moving soul that began in the beginning, and it's still coming into creation today, but it's coming in a different form, in a different way. And that's what I mean by God turning up the volume, because Rabbi Nachman says that everybody has a spark of Messiah, and it gets lit by our service of God. Now, when God turns up the volume, guess what's getting turned up? It's that spark inside of you. That's redemptive quality, that desire to save, to redeem, to repair, to restore, to rebuild. Now, there's another word from the Zohar that teaches us that there were many redemptions, right? The Jews were saved from Egypt, they were saved from Babylon, they were saved from Assyria, they were saved from Persia. Now we're in what's called the long-term Roman exile. 2,000 years of the hegemony, the power structure that began in Rome, and it's still happening today. You see it migrated, the idea of the Roman exile. It migrated to Britain, it migrated to Germany, it migrated to America. What the Zohar tells us is that all the previous redemptions are woven into this one. All the plagues of those redemptions and all that which is saved, all the miracles that need to happen for Jews to recognize their own identity, to their own spark of this, and to bring it back to Eretz Yisrael. So the final redemption is a collective of all the previous redemptions. And if you look for it today, you can see it everywhere, in the plagues and in the blessings that are experienced all over the world. Now, there's an interesting midrash that teaches us something. It says that in the Messianic era, all of Jerusalem will become a mikdash, the holy temple. And all of excuse me, I reversed that. All the temple will become the level of Jerusalem. In other words, the Kedusha, the holiness of the temple, will spread to the entire city of Jerusalem. And all the holiness of the city of Jerusalem will spread to the land of Eretz Israel. And all the holiness of the land of Eretz Israel will spread to the world at large. So you see, again, we have this expansion of the power. Just like there was one redemption, now there's a global redemption. So too, there was a place of holiness called Har HaBayit, the temple of Mount, where the temple stood, where the sacrifices were brought, where the Shekhinah, where the divine presence was revealed every day. Now that power is getting spread into the city of Jerusalem. And then Jerusalem is going to spread it to the country, and so on, into the entire world. Well, the Midrash goes on to tell us that when that light of Jerusalem is revealed, kings from all the world will come to see the light at night. In other words, it's not a physical light, it's a spiritual light, yet it will become materialized, it will become visible. There will be a change in our tools of perception, that we will see the light at night in Jerusalem, and it will burn bright. That power is another example of the spreading, or God turning up the volume. And it happens individually as well. That each of us have that spark, it has to be turned up, it becomes greater and greater. And we discover that we have a godly soul, that the journey's over. I don't have to look for God anymore. He's already alive and well inside me. Now, every person has to have that discovery. I could talk about it all day, but until you have it, you haven't experienced it. And when you experience it, you become a different person. That's what it says when King Saul came upon Shmuel HaNavi and his students prophesying. He fell on the ground and started to prophesy. The light came into him and he couldn't physically bear it. He fell on the ground. But there's a level where you can physically bear it. We say that Moses was the chief example of that he spoke face to face with God and he didn't fall down. Now, there were a few occasions when the people sinned, so he and Aaron did fall down to pray for mercy. But in other words, the light is coming from inside out, and if we have the vessel to hold it, we become new beings. And if we don't, it can break us. Now, this idea, I just thought about it. At the end of the first Matrix movie, what happens over there? If anybody watches these movies, remembers that movie, it's 20 years old already. At the end of the movie, the hero, right, flies inside the bad guy and explodes him from the inside out. So we don't want to be like that bad guy. We don't want to explode from the inside out. We want to be able to hold the light. And that's where the mitzvot come into play. That's where our learning expands our mind to be able to hold this massive universe, the idea of one God in all this multiplicity. We're still here. Little station break. So we don't want to break up because we can't hold the light. Now the Torah goes on to tell us, the rabbis teach us that when this light is revealed, Kol Adam yichve mechupato shel chavero. Every man will be burnt by the chuppah of his friend. What does that mean? His chuppah. Well, the chuppah is a symbol of the surrounding light of your soul, the makifim. And so each man being burnt by the other means there's going to be a day where we can all see each other's true souls. And you're going to see how great the simple person is. And we're going to, in relation to who we thought he was. And we might see some rabbis who have very little souls. Or maybe even the opposite. And the people that we think are holy are not going to be so holy. And the people that we didn't know were holy are actually very holy. And that's what it means. Kol Adam yichve mechupato. He will be burnt by the aura of the soul of his friend. Again, do we want to get burnt like that? Well, we want to be prepared to be able to see what a Jew is. To see the light of God in a Jew is to see the burning bush. You know, the sneh, bo'er, ve'eno inenu ukal, right? The bush is burning, but it's not consumed. That is that divine soul coming out. And God showed it to Moshe to show him what you're going to go to save. You're not just saving a bunch of slaves from Egypt. You're saving a spark of me in them. So that's one of the things that the Messiah has to understand and do. So on an even more traumatic level, it says that the Rasha'im will be destroyed by the light and the Tzaddikim will live by the light. They will be illuminated. Because when this light comes into somebody who can hold it, they're going to recognize and become their true selves at the highest level. But the people who are not prepared, well, it's going to hurt them, literally. And it could cause their lower souls to fly out of their bodies, which is essentially what death is. So we don't want to be on that side of the equation. So when the kings came to Jerusalem to see this light, hopefully they'll be able to hold it, right? That's the purpose. They're not here to be destroyed. But this light is around elsewhere. We see it in the Talmud. When Rabbi Yochanan went to visit his Rebbe, Rabbi Eliezer Gadol, he was unwell. It says that his sleeve came back in a dark room, and the whole room was lit up from his arm. Now, what was that? That was the Shekhinah, the divine presence, his holy soul, the collective soul, that was already dwelling on his body. And when his shirt was removed, with just the sleeve, the room was illuminated. That's the light of the individual when it's shining out of him in fullness, in completeness, in a healthy way where nobody gets hurt. That idea, well, I had the merit to be in the room with the Lubavitcher Rebbe once, and I looked at his hand, and it was glowing. You could see right through the layers of his skin. It was literally glowing on his body. And the whole room seemed filled with this unbelievable electricity. But it wasn't physical electricity, obviously. So that the divine presence, I believe, was resting on the Rebbe then. And that's in our generation. So God is turning up the volume, folks. And here in the Sukkah on the 7th day, the day of David HaMelech, Malka Mashiach, the day when the Messiah is identified as coming from the house of David. Are we ready? Are we really ready? We better get ready. And how we get ready is through purifying ourselves of selfishness and thinking about the other person. Being there for the other person, trying to save whatever that can be saved. You know, why is our tradition filled with, Moses went to save a sheep and David went to save a sheep? Because it's a metaphor for what we're here to do. If you're talented and you're gifted, you weren't given those gifts and talents for you to be talented and gifted. You were given those talents and gifts in order to help others who don't have them. And if you have a talent and a gift and you're not using it, you're going to be a very miserable person. And I've seen it in my therapy practice over and over. Talented people who do not use their gifts end up depressed and angry. And Rav Kook said 100 years ago, all anger is unexpressed creativity. Because when you create, you're not angry. You're happy. You're doing what you do. You're doing what God wants you to do. But when I hold it inside, when I hold that light inside, it will hurt us. It will push from within and out, and we don't want to be, like that character in the movie, exploding from within. So that is my blessing to all of us here in the 7th day of Sukkah, Hoshana Rabbah. And we're going into the day of the joy of the Torah, where we bring the light all the way down to the legs and to the feet. And we can't even sit and learn. We have to get up and dance with joy. So we should all be blessed with that internal joy, the expression of it in our external life, in our dancing, in our prayer, in our laughter, in our praise, in our gratitude. So Shabbat Shalom to everyone. God bless you all. We'll return to our regular Seder on Sunday on Patreon, our Rebbe Nachman Talks, and all the other things that are coming out. We published a new meditation this week on the Sukkah. More are coming. And God bless you all to hear the volume when it gets turned up. Shabbat Shalom.